A solitary pigeon continued showing up in the patient's room and perching itself on the patient's bed after an unknown elderly unconscious man was unexpectedly admitted to the hospital. Reportedly, members of the medical team attempted to drive it away, but it kept coming back. However, why, the question is, from where did it come? The doctors were shocked when they saw something on the bird's leg that could explain everything. One day, a man was taken to the hospital for treatment. Because he did not have any kind of identification on him, nobody knew how old he was or where he was from. The fact that a person's identification could be validated by other means meant that this wasn't an entirely unusual occurrence. Yet, it appeared that the enigmatic man was not on any system. He was a complete enigma, but one thing was certain: he had had a very severe head injury, and he was currently unconscious. It appeared as though his brain was expanding, which would put pressure on the inside of his skull and result in a variety of issues, some of which would be more medically urgent, and some of which might potentially endure for the rest of his life. When dealing with an issue of this nature, it is essential to find a solution as quick as humanly possible. A medically induced coma was administered to him as the doctors hurriedly attempted to ascertain the extent of the damage caused by the accident. It is hoped that this will prevent any further damage to his brain from occurring, as it would prevent it from enlarging after drawing blood from him. Conducting tests on him, cleaning him up, and placing him in a room with a window, they made him comfortable. The medical personnel dispersed to determine what their next move should be. However, upon her return, a nurse discovered something she had not been anticipating. On the stomach of the unconscious man was what appeared to be a gray pigeon. It was a rather weird occurrence, but the nurse was aware that pigeons had no business being in a medical facility like that. They might potentially transmit diseases that are harmful to humans. Thus, it had to be eliminated. The question is how the nurse managed to remove it out of the room without the animal freaking out or making a huge racket. She slammed the door immediately, isolating the creature within the room, and began waving her arms and a clipboard. She coaxed the bird to leave via the open window, and it did so in an elegant manner. When the nurse realized the emergency wasn't going to happen, she decided not to tell anyone about it. It was to be hoped that something like that wouldn't occur again. If you put a hospital bed next to a window, then these things are practically guaranteed to take place, aren't they? The nurse performed her rounds, took some notes, and made sure that the mysterious patient was at ease and that his condition had not deteriorated while she was there. She turned around and exited the room once her activities were finished, so that she could attend to her other responsibilities. After waiting a few minutes, she suddenly had the realization that she had forgotten her pen and clipboard in the patient's room. So, she went back to get them. But what she saw when she opened the door caused her to gasp in astonishment and surprise, and for her jaw to drop wide. Once more in that location was the pigeon. There was no doubt that it was the same bird. The nurse was able to identify a specific white marking that was located on the animal's head. The nurse shoos the bird out the window once more, but this time, rather than flying away as it had before, the bird simply perches on the window ledge and looks inside. It didn't appear to be overly frightened or afraid of the nurse, and it had an odd fixation on the unconscious patient. Once more, she swats it away with her clipboard and dashes out of the room. However, this was just the beginning of things. The pigeon kept making return visits. It would enter the room any time the man left the window open, and then make itself comfortable on the man's bed. It would sometimes walk up and down, as if checking on the man to see how he was doing. It was a very peculiar thing to behold. Naturally, the medical staff would make an effort to remove the pigeon from the examination room. Nevertheless, the more frequently it occurred, the more curious they grew about its presence. Why, after all, did the bird have such an unhealthy preoccupation with the human? What was it that kept the pigeon coming back for more, time and time again? The response would completely blow each and every one of their heads. People in the hospital began to take notice of the pigeon that was either loitering by the window or flying in to sit with the patient. At one point, the pigeon even flew inside. Nobody could make the connection between the two. And even if there were, neither the poor unconscious man nor the pigeon would be able to tell them about it, even if there was one. But all of a sudden, somebody saw a fascinating and intriguing clue about the bird that had been there the whole time. Something was attached to its leg, but from where they were standing, it was impossible to tell what it was. However, in order to have a better look at it, they would need to catch the pigeon first. So the staff got to work, coming up with a strategy to catch the bird. They really did come up with a clever solution to the problem. The staff members decided to leave the window open, but secured it open with a piece of string that was attached to the lock. The staff would draw the cord and release the latch whenever the pigeon flew into the room again. This would cause the window to slam shut, thus enclosing the bird in the space of the patient. After all that was required of them was to seize it and give the observation that a keen observer had made a more thorough examination. Pigeons, on the other hand, are quick and have a sharp mind. If the doctors wanted to prevent it from spreading further, they needed to act swiftly. Pigeons have been clocked flying at speeds of up to 60 kilometers per hour, just under 100 miles per hour. They are able to avoid being captured in an instant and with ease by anything that may attempt to do so because of their lightning-fast reflexes. Therefore, the odds were stacked against the medical staff that they would actually scoff at the bird. Even yet, they had no choice but to make an effort if they wished to unravel the riddle. The doctor discreetly unlocked the door and stepped inside. But the madly flying pigeon reacted quickly and soared towards the open door, entering the corridor after it. As the rogue bird flapped around the room, people could be heard screaming and rushing away. However, every member of the medical team was attempting to capture the pigeon. They were unable to let it run free or let it fly away without first capturing it and determining what was attached to its leg. They had no idea what was linked to the bird's leg, but everyone understood that whatever it was significant in some way. After all, what was the pigeon doing in that location? Who was the sender? Everyone had a lot of inquiries, and the only way to get the answers they needed was to catch the pigeon. After some time, the entire medical center began searching for this bird. The doctors held out hope that none of these measures would prove fruitless in the end. It was absolutely necessary for them to get a hold of the pigeon and figure out what its secret was. It could be the key to solving the riddle of the elderly man who was in a coma. To their good fortune, however, one of the patients had exceptionally quick reflexes and was able to pluck the bird out of the air and hold on to it in a gentle but tight grip. He took it over to the attending doctors and the other members of the medical staff who had gathered around. The things that they saw caused everyone there to frown. It turned out to be a little vial that was fastened to the pigeon's leg. 2 very small pills, which the doctors identified as some form of medication, were located within the container. But what was the purpose of the pigeon going about its business with a slender tube of medication fastened to its leg? However, there was a tiny piece of paper wrapped around the vial. The doctors unrolled it in order to read. The minuscule handwritten words, which read as follows: "This medicine is to save." Only those 5 words were said, with no more commentary or explanations offered. The doctors wasted no time in taking the pills to the pharmacist, who examined them in great detail. After a few hours of investigation, the pharmacist was quite certain that the 2 tablets were the cortisone medication that had the effect of reducing the swelling in the brain. Surprisingly, the unconscious man lying in the hospital bed exhibited exactly the same symptoms as described here. Someone who cannot be identified sent the pigeon with the intention of helping the elderly man. On the other hand, no one could believe it. However, if the tablets were ineffective, there was a possibility that the guy in a coma would never regain consciousness again, immediately passing away while lying on the bed. However, the medical professionals had exhausted all of their treatment alternatives. So, they were clinging to this pigeon's delivery of 2 medicines as their final shred of optimism. They might very well turn out to be the man's savior. They gave the patient the cortisone injection. Then, they waited while holding their breath. Within 30 minutes, the patient began to exhibit encouraging symptoms. The swelling that had developed in his brain had begun to decrease. The most perplexing aspect of the situation is the fact that the bird never came back after the accident. While he was finally starting to regain consciousness and make progress in his recovery. After the tablets were delivered, the pigeon was nowhere to be seen and was never found again. Pigeons might often get a bad rap, but they are intelligent and clever. This is truly why they were used during the war to deliver messages, and in this case, a pigeon was used to save an old man's life. So, now it's over to you. What do you think of this incredible story? What do you think about pigeons? Are they a nuisance? Or are they a useful, intelligent, and potentially life-saving animal? As always, love to hear from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments.